Now I'm Italian.
Welcome to, not an emergency, but a, what would be the word for it? Not emergency, but
Special?
special,
Well, isn't that special?
very much time-sensitive soul trap. We woke up this morning and Kevin and I and even Samuel, we had already kind of discussed some direction that we're going to go. If you're watching this, just recently we released sort of our behind-the-scenes episode that we just did. We've got a lot of things coming up. We're going to be in a couple weeks up in Ocala. That's April 5th. We'll be at the Bigfoot Festival there. If you're in the area, Central Florida, we want you to come by. We're going to be doing live shows, live broadcasts, live interviews. Be a great opportunity. In May, we're going to be in McMinnville at one of North America's largest UFO festivals. It's going to be a great time. We came in and we had an episode that we're going to do, and I was going to be talking about, in fact, I was going to be reading some stories that have come in from some listeners and sharing with you some stories about the dark side, about Mothman, about some of these creatures, skinwalkers, things that exist in the shadows that we used to think only existed in lore, but more and more we're coming to find out that they're real. However, as the Soul Trap always does, we like to stay nimble and aware of what's going on and connect dots. And we woke up this morning and there are a lot of dots out there.
Yeah.
Would you say that?
Plenty of dots.
Plenty of dots. So in our pre-production meeting, which means 5 minutes from walking from the office to the studio, Kevin and I were discussing about dot 1, dot 2, dot 3, dot like 600, and we thought, let's just pause, and we're going to rapid fire some questions at me from him, some information from him to me, and we're going to talk about some of these things going on and see what the dots mean and if there is connectivity. We're going to be talking about the pyramids. We're going to be talking about JFK. We're going to be talking about air travel, the grid being shut down, a la the Tower of Babel. We're going to be talking about a lot of things here in a brief amount of time. A fast, short episode, but we're going to throw a lot of information at you and hopefully get you started for the weekend really good. All right, so we are going to start talking about the pyramids. Mainstream news has just come out. This is mainstream, and it's so interesting to see the mainstream finally catch up with us conspiracy theorists. And it's also nice to see the mainstream finally catch up with the Bible. I'm going to show you a book here in just a minute, but they're talking about something discovered beneath the pyramids.
Yeah.
Well, we already have a book here written years ago called Beneath the Pyramids, Egypt's Greatest Secret Uncovered. They're finally catching up to something that's been around for a long time. Kevin, bring us up to speed. What's going on with the stories of the pyramids?
Well, there's I can't remember the name right now. It's some institute. And they went and did this advanced radar scanning of the Giza pyramids. And they found that there's a little bit more than meets the eye. So below the pyramids, there are 8, or below the center pyramid, there are 8 cylinders that I believe that go over 600 meters below them. Mm-hmm. And these are perfectly symmetrical. Yep. And then going down the cylinders, there is a spiral. Could be a staircase, could be some sort of antenna. They're not sure what it is. Uh-huh. And then at the bottom of those pillars, there is another 80 by 80, perfectly square, 80 by 80 meter chamber underneath, a square underneath that. And they're even saying now that there is more stuff below that as well, but they haven't been able to get to that yet.
Oh yeah. Okay, so here's the article, the Express Tribune. Massive underground structures found beneath Giza pyramids spark ancient energy grid conspiracy theories. Now, I don't believe that these can be Joseph or Imhotep's grain storage sites.
Right.
Now, it's possible that they could be. It's possible that that could be. But I have always been of the personal belief that the Giza pyramids are pre-flood.
Yes.
Based upon their technology. There's a great book called Fingerprints of the Gods. If you don't have it, you got to get it. We reference it quite often, whether directly or indirectly, from Graham Hancock. And he gives some great information in here. Like one of the examples is, he uses this example real quick. In other words, modern builders with all of the advantages of high-tech engineering at their disposal can barely hoist weights of 200 tons. That's right now. It's surprising to find that the builders of the Giza pyramids hoisted such weights on that level on a routine basis. As of right now, there are only 2 cranes in the world that can lift something that heavy high up in the air. So there's always been some question about, okay, this could not have been a bunch of Egyptians in togas building the pyramids. Now, the other pyramids that were built, we believe, our theory here at the Soul Trap is that they were post-flood attempts with a lack of technology of trying to mimic what survived the flood, the 3 pyramids of Giza. Because the 3 pyramids of Giza clearly line up with the stars, the Isis stars.
Yeah.
That's another one of those things where people are like, how could they have known that? Because when you read, for instance, there's a quote in Egyptian writing that says, "Thy sister Isis cometh unto thee rejoicing, great with child like the star Sept." Now that's Sirius, the dog star, is what they mean. Horus Sept cometh forth from thee in the form of Horus. The clear implication here is that Sirius was to be regarded as a dual entity, a dual star. The problem with that is the second star is not visible to the naked eye. You have to have a high-power telescope to see the second one.
Or somebody telling you about it.
Or somebody who came from that area telling you about it. Because the stars, the Bible says in the book of Judges, fought in their courses against Sisera. So, very interesting. The Tribune says a stunning new radar study has sent shockwaves across the internet, revealing a vast subterranean complex beneath the Pyramid of Giza, challenging long-held beliefs that the structures were built solely as royal tombs. Now, those are long-held beliefs by the mainstream. Nobody believed that did any kind of real research. So let me give you this real quick quote. This is interesting. Get this book. It's right from the cutting edge. Andrew Collins, Beneath the Pyramids. Here's what he says. He's talking about the history. Coptic Arab tales. Listen to this. Rumors concerning a subterranean realm existing beneath the bedrock in Giza have been around for an extremely long time. Following the Arab conquest of Egypt in the 7th century, Arab travelers and historians learned of stories regarding a hidden world existing below the plateau of Egypt's Coptic Christian communities, who were regarded as their inheritors of the Pharaoh ancient wisdom. For example, and he gives a name here on the authority of one particular writer, wrote that prior to a cataclysm involving a flood, this is an ancient writer, prior to a cataclysmic event involving a flood, in which also fire was to fall as well, the pyramids were constructed as depositors of wisdom, and on and on and on and on it goes. So the point being, once you get through the lore, is that they were talking about that already. Here's another one he writes on page 25. Even further back in history, the 4th century, Greco-Roman historian Ammianus Marcellinus, who traveled extensively in Egypt, wrote concerning the pyramids. He had this to say about Giza's underground realm. Now listen to what he says. There are also, in the same vicinity of the pyramids, subterranean fissures and winding passages. Isn't that what you just said?
Yeah.
This guy's writing it in the 4th century. Winding passages, which is said to, let's see here, which it is said, those acquainted with the ancient rites, since they had foreknowledge that a deluge was coming, and feared that the memory of the ceremonies might be destroyed, dug in the earth in many places with great labor. Now, that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
So that answers a couple questions. Because when we were talking about this in the office the other day, if the sons of God were judged and they came into the daughters of men and they lost their initial habitation, they now are no longer able to go interdimensionally back and forth because they have left their first estate. But they're still sons of God. They would have believed that the flood was coming.
Oh, yeah.
They would have known that more than man. So how was there a second breakout of giants? If sons of God coming into the daughters of men produced the first one in Genesis 6, the question has always been, did those sons of God get destroyed? If not, or if they did, how was there a second breakout? Because we obviously have sons of God post-flood.
Yeah.
Well, maybe what they did was exactly what they said. They dug and feared the sea. Those acquainted with the ancient rites, since they had foreknowledge that a deluge was coming, dug into the earth. And this guy, the 4th century, talked about winding passages.
Yeah. That's exactly what they're seeing.
That's exactly what they're saying there. There's been an argument for a long time that when you go to the Dead Sea area, when you look at the Dead Sea, that you also see like 90-degree angles of what could have been remnant of buildings. Some people believe when you go to the Grand Canyon, you can clearly see these 90-degree sheer angles, not of erosion over time, not even of something breaking off, but what appears to be former buildings, former structures of some kind. So it makes you wonder what is underneath of the pyramid.
Yeah, and a pyramid shape too. I'm not an engineer, but if you look at the shape of a pyramid, and then the sheer volume of water that would come on there, that shape would displace the weight on it. So if it was something designed for them to go through a global flood, I think they did pretty well with that.
Yeah.
And then it was also coated in what was the material that was on the outside of it? It was
like a limestone material.
Yeah, which could potentially insulate it from being penetrated with water.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's interesting because in this same book, it's called Chapter 13, Inside the Great Pyramid are 2 chambers that probably hold the key to understanding the monument's ultimate function, the writer says. One is the Queen's Chamber, and the other is the King's Chamber. You got to read about that, but it's fascinating. What's interesting is there's just such a deep connection with the stars in these 3. And he writes here, let's see here, Andrew Collins writes on page 142, the idea that the ancient Egyptians believed that starlight could symbolically be channeled through the tomb of the dead is displayed perfectly by the image of an osseriform or mummified form in a standing position. And we have the picture here. You can see it up on screen. So it's fascinating to think about, what's there. And this has been going on for a long time. You've got Graham Hancock talking about Fingerprint of the Gods. You've got Andrew Collins, a great book, Beneath the Pyramids. Magician of the Gods is a stunning book. That one will rock your world, again, by Graham Hancock. Because what he's going to posit is that there are underground cities. And this is around the world. In fact, there is another book that we've read called Underworld, Mysterious Origins of Civilization. When you go beneath the water, there are roads, there are cities, unbelievable underneath. Why? Well, there was a global flood. But he talks about it here. Noah's Ark is well known. When you start reading about the underground cities, he's talking about this on page, let's see here, page 140. It goes into it. Talking about 200 subterranean complexes with a minimum of 2 levels. So what's happening is that it's just now catching up. Now the question is, from where do we go?
Right.
Is this just going to be so let's say this, let's ask this. Here's my question to you. You can bounce it back to me. If the sons of God are to show up again as in the days of Noah, how do they show up? Out of the clear blue? Or is there a context in which they begin to show up? Do we start seeing these UFO phenomena? Do we start seeing this change in the archaeological belief system?
Right.
Because we've been told that these were tombs, pharaohs built them. Now we're being said, no, there's something else. What if they start finding more? Is there going to be a construct now in which the sons of God say, hey, we've been gone for a while.
Right.
But good news, we're back. What do you think?
Well, the pyramids being probably the most well-known landmark in the entire world, and from the time that we are kids, that that they drug these things up by they may have used elephants, or they may have I saw one where they piled sand up and then they dragged the bricks up there and then they put the sand away. That's what we're taught from elementary school. But so then when everything that we're taught, if that's just flipped upside down now, saying, well, no, they didn't build it. Someone else had to build it. I think, and then with, like you said, with the UFOs and all the disclosure that's coming out, that is just, 100% prepped, ready to receive the Starman.
Oh, yeah.
Or the Starman ascends from his resting place beneath the pyramids up those shafts and comes out of there and presents himself to the world.
Crazy, but we've always been thinking that we would see the sons of God maybe coming from the sky.
Yeah, ascending and descending. Yeah.
But what did the witch at Endor say?
Yeah.
I see gods
ascending.
Yeah. Ascending. It's interesting because the Bible says in Jeremiah chapter 32, great in counsel, mighty in work, for thine eyes are open upon all the ways of the sons of men to give everyone according to his ways and according to the fruit of his doings. It's talking about God now, which has set signs and wonders in the land of Egypt, even unto this day.
Mm-hmm.
God has put signs and wonders. There's signs and wonders there. Now, it's interesting because when you look at signs and wonders, you can almost run that into the New Testament and almost run that into the tribulation period, that time right there. And there's so much connectivity. For instance, there's a great book you should get called by N.W. Hutchinson called The Great Pyramid, Prophecy in Stone. It's estimated that the casing blocks that were removed for building purposes, the most common estimate of the number of casing blocks it required to cover the 24 square acres of the pyramid just happens to be 144,000.
Yeah.
When you start going through, it's fascinating. There's beautiful pictures and outlines in here. Here's an interesting thought. I think one of the best ones is by Raymond Capp called The Great Pyramid Decoded. I like his material good. Here's an interesting one. Don't forget, on Mars, the Mars pyramids.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now we have a guy who is now in charge of Doge.
Yeah.
Who just said recently, we're going to Mars.
And we're going to take Doge to Mars.
Next year, I think.
Next year.
Yeah.
Is that what it was? So what if, you talk about a crazy world moving at breakneck speed. What if this is connected? What if here's what you need to be looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my prediction.
All right.
Here's my prediction. You need to be looking for there to be pictures from Mars of pyramid-like structures.
Yeah. Clearer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because now what's he say? Elon Musk, let's see. Elon Musk is going to Mars. Bluntly asked, hope to go to Mars. Yeah, he says we can do it next year. And he wants to colonize Mars, SpaceX Mars colonization program. So what we need to be doing is looking for pictures coming out, quote unquote, from Mars that would be similar to pyramid.
Yeah.
That would be really crazy.
Yeah.
That would be really crazy. I think you're going to find that there's going to be more discovery of the underworld. And it's interesting to think about. I just had this thought too. We were talking, and I'm just going to develop this, but we talked with Joseph Dolmage.
Mm-hmm.
Joseph Dolmage has an interesting theory about Melchizedek, and he has an interesting theory about the fact that Adam and Eve had a multiplicity of children before Cain and Abel. Now, there's two trains of thought that have been fairly consistent when it comes to the sons of God in Genesis 6. The simple has been, and I think the most incorrect has been, that the sons of God were simply the godly line of Seth, and the daughters of men were the ungodly line of Cain, and those two lines merged. I just don't see that at all in any way, shape, or form. The standard operating, which I would call myself this, is that those sons of God were in some way, shape, or form an angelic being.
Mm-hmm.
And they left their habitation, entered into the daughters of men, and here we go. But what if you could merge? Because what if there was a third way?
Okay.
Okay, what if Because the Bible says that Adam was a son of God. In the book of Luke, small s, not the son of God, but small s.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So here's my question to you that are listening and to you. If Adam was a son of God, and before he fell, he was in a state of holiness,
Right.
innocence, righteousness, whatever you want to call it. If he had children, what would those sons be? Would they be sons of God? I believe they would be.
Yeah.
You would only not be a son of God, a small s son of God, once sin entered into you.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, was there a line from Adam that remained in Eden that ate of the tree of life? The sons of Adam that sinned, the daughters of men, that line, were kicked out of the Garden of Eden. The sons of God were living in the Garden of Eden until they saw the daughters of men. And then you had that kind of mixture, and you had that mixture of humanity, and now the race kind of came back together. The question is, were there any sons of God still alive? Where did Eden go? Matt King talks about this. All of that starts boggling your mind. And in the past, we thought, it's kind of kooky talk. But not anymore, because there's no telling. That's underneath. And if there's something underneath this pyramid, then the question is, what's underneath the rest of the pyramids that obviously are global?
I think that the same company or the same institute, I think they mentioned that they did similar scans, not as detailed and deep, but in South America and Mexico and things like that. And we're seeing that there is still more that meets the eye there as well, too. So it's probably just going to open the floodgates for them to start going to all these structures all over the world and starting to see what's going on below them.
And we've got the video right here. What's interesting is that they think it was somehow a way to collect energy.
Like Tesla did that.
I was just going to say, Nikola Tesla once speculated that pyramids might collect and harness Earth's natural energy. Engineer Christopher Dunn echoed similar ideas in his book, The Giza Power Plant, which I have, which is a fascinating study, proposing that the Great Pyramid operated as a giant machine capable of converting seismic vibrations and on and on and on. There's no telling what's there. We've got the charts here. We're going to put them up on the screen for you. And then there's the AI representation of what it looks like underneath, which, when you think about it, if you think about the Washington Monument, if you think about the monument in St. Petersburg, not St. Petersburg, but St. Peter's Monument, the Basilica there in Rome, these obelisks that you see, that's what it looks like. The top is a pyramid, and then you have the shaft going all the way down. And so you've got a really, really fascinating, interesting thing. All right, send us your ideas, send us your emails in the comments below. Communicate with us. If we see one of your comments and we think it's a good idea, we're going to come back and mention you in the next episode and give you some credit. We're interested in any book recommendations. Put them in the comments below. Email us. That's weird. Okay. From there, we jump totally unrelated to the JFK files. So wait, I don't know where you go with that.
Well, I think they kind of just confirms things that we've already known.
Oh, yeah.
But it's just interesting to see them come out in broad daylight.
Oh, yeah.
And they mention they're one of the, and there's 80,000 pages. So,
yes.
So, that's a whole lot to go through. But there's some of the ones that are very interesting. They're calling out, they're saying the Jews helped. They didn't say it was the Russians or it was they mentioned Russia and Cuba and but they said the Jews. And then there's a certain sect in the CIA that was running the whole thing there, and that they had all these warnings that he was going to get shot, that Oswald was going to get shot, but everything was just kind of put down in hush hush there. And it's a lot of information. It's a huge information dump that just came out in the past couple days.
Well, there's two things. This is going deep. There is a deeper underlying theory that when you look at World War II, you look at World War I and World War II, that there was a power struggle, a global power struggle. And it's obvious that America, and I'm talking about the American banking, the American power brokers, they were aligned more with Nazism than they were with communism. They were aligned more with a social fascism, which is real close to what we have now, a soft social fascism, than communism. And so you've got like Prescott Bush and them supporting Nazis, that kind of thing. Well, coming out of World War II, you had Operation Paperclip. We pulled in a lot of Nazis. That's where we got the nuclear weapon from. A lot of different help with the nuclear weapon, a lot of the things like that. There is some interesting work done by Jim Marrs that talks about the Fourth Reich. You ought to get that book. I believe that's the name of it, is The Fourth Reich by Jim Marrs. And, excuse me, he talks about the internal battle within the government, the black government that runs the government. Just like there is a black pope behind the pope you see, the government that runs the government, that there was an internal battle between communism, and you had the Verona Papers that came out and all of those, versus Nazism and who was going to run. I think it's very, very clear, and it has been for anybody that's had any set of eyes, that the assassination of JFK was from the industrial, military, governmental complex, just plain and simple. There's a great book called JFK, the CIA, Vietnam, and the Plot to Assassinate John F. Kennedy by L. Fletcher Prouty. This is one of the best ones. If you want what I think is the seminal work on the book, you need to get Crossfire by Jim Marrs. This was actually the basis for Oliver Stone's movie. And it's absolutely fascinating, and it's well worth the read. It'll just change your whole mind on the outset. And then there is one that is it flies under the radar, but is written by Dr. Michael Sala. It's called Kennedy's Last Stand, Eisenhower, UFO, and the Majestic 12 and JFK's Assassination. So there are other that's out there. His name is Jim Garrison. He's the only one to bring a trial case. That's who Kevin Costner played in JFK's movie. The premier book that you got to get, other than Crossfire, is On the Trail of the Assassins. It's a $13 paperback book. You can get it for $9 on Kindle. It is an amazing, amazing book, and one that is just, it's just amazing. It just absolutely is. So I think that there's definitely something to be gleaned when you look at all the different connections. Of course, coming right out of that was right in the heyday. I mean, you had Project Artichoke that kicked off in 1954, which is basically the Manchurian Candidate. You've got a lot of different stuff connecting there, and it's so much information. But the truth of the matter is, I think it's one of those things where you and I care, but most people can be like, whatever. Yeah. It is what it is, and go on. It's definitely something else going on, and that leads us real quick to the fire. Yeah. London fire. We got a news flash on that. What's going on with that?
So London's airport is shut down at least until midnight tonight because of a fire at a substation, a power substation that was nearby, completely shut it down. So you're looking at thousands of flights coming in, and you can look at the flight radar, and they're coming in, and then they just go the opposite direction, have to go land somewhere.
Yeah, London, March 21st, from Reuters. Britain's Heathrow Airport was shut down on Friday after a huge fire in a nearby substation knocked out its power. So you mean to tell me that like a place like that doesn't have the generator, like a backup grid?
Right.
Yeah, a backup grid type of thing? So anyway, stranding passengers around the world, angering airliners who question how such crucial infrastructure could fail, which I agree. Huge orange flames and plumes of black smoke shot into the sky around 2300. Police said while there was no indication of foul play, they retained an open mind, and counterterrorism officers would lead the inquiries given the critical nature of the infrastructure.
Pretty foul play, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, you would think, as somebody said, one top executive from a European airline told Reuters, you would think they would have significant backup power.
Yep.
So,
what happened?
What is the point? I mean, how do you respond to that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. They said there's a 1,300 flights affecting over 145,000 passengers. That's one of the biggest airports. It's a central airport, and now they're shut down. And that's just the immediate impact. I mean, what's the ripple? I mean, we've all been in airports when a flight gets delayed, and then your terminal backs up, and then other planes back up because it's just a ripple effect that goes on.
I'm looking at it here, man. It's horrible. My gosh, man, it is everywhere. Yeah, it backed up everything. Oh my goodness. Well, yeah, and you have to ask that. Britain's National Grid said on Friday, the network of the North Hyde Substation 1 has been reconfigured to restore power to the parts of Heathrow Airport connected to it on an interim basis. So, I mean, they still don't have a solid backup plan for that. So if that could happen in London, what could happen in the United States of America?
Absolutely.
You know, and I'm telling you start looking at this kind of stuff like that, and you have to start wonder is, you know, at what point are we looking at national terrorism?
Yeah.
Not terrorists, but what point? I mean, when do you start looking at, hey, that's Russia, that's China, just a slow prick here. They're just probing what will cause the most harm, what will cause the most damage. So you've got pyramids, and the discovery there. You've got JFK and the military-industrial complex, which is why I don't believe that they went after Donald Trump, because I don't think they miss.
Right.
Now, whether they used the Manchurian candidates, which I believe those two assassins were, but whether they used them as tools to boost his candidacy or to change the narrative, that's one. But I don't think that they miss. When they want you, they won't. We are in Daily Plaza. We can put up a couple pictures. We've done a show on that before.
Yeah.
And they do not miss when they want you. It wasn't all that, well, we can digress in that. But then you start looking at Heathrow Airport. It's on fire. And then you start looking at just the Doge going on. We're going to Mars. We're doing this. We're doing that.
Department of Education now sliced.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good thing.
Bring it back to the States.
And then you've got Putin and Trump supposedly coming up with a peace deal.
Yeah.
Right? And they have a peace deal in theory, and the Ukraine bombs the crap out of Russia. So Russia turns around and bombs them back. So who now is actually the enemy? Is it Ukraine?
Yeah.
Or is it Russia? It is absolutely crazy. All this happened for us from about 7 till 10 this morning.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is ongoing. We are living in very, very, very unique times. Fast moving, to and fro, information flowing. If you don't believe we're in the end times, you just don't believe we're in the end times.
Right.
Because it is here. Okay. Next week, we're going to be dumping some new shows. We got some other shows coming out. We just wanted to send you off into the weekend with this one, kind of a high-powered, organic, quick-hitting news coverage. Stay tuned. Jesus is coming.